Tables and Fatherhood. This is Josiah here with my co-host Eric, coming back this week, and we read another one of his books. I have been getting very unlucky on the wheel, unfortunately, and this time around we read the Book of Joy, which I will fully admit. I already told Eric this. This is the first one of all of the books, other than the Interview with the Devil, which was recommended that I listen to. That I listened to an audiobook, and my recollection is poor at best. We'll say that. So, Eric, if
Yeah.
you could go ahead and lead today's discussion, that would be mighty kind of you.
Yeah. And it's been interesting. Like the books that we've had, like you mentioned, the Interview with the Devil, right? So you had a little bit of a religious undertone there. We've been kind of talking about AI has like weaved into our some of our different books and themes. We had like some darker ones too. So I think with everything going on in the world right now, I was really excited that we landed on the Book of Joy. This is one that I had started in the past. Probably got about a third of the way through and then didn't finish it. I too listened to it on an audiobook. I remember reading stuff from the Dalai Lama in the past and really enjoying that. But I've never read anything with Desmond Tutu. So that was kind of interesting to me. So basically, the Book of Joy it's a week long conversation between the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu as they explore how to find lasting joy in a world full of suffering. So they draw on their own experiences and the exile that Dalai Lama had experienced and oppression that Desmond Tutu experienced, their loss, and they argue that joy isn't the absence of hardship, but rather it's that something deeper that can be cultivated through perspective and compassion and connection. So. At its core, this book is less about like feeling happy, and it's more about building a lifestyle of resiliency and a meaningful way of life. So I thought it was refreshing to have something that was just very light, and even if you're not like really digesting every portion of it, I just loved the uplifting tone of it. So
Yeah,
maybe, yeah.
and you can't forget Douglas Abrams. He's sort of a journalist who um, facilitated the entire talk between the two.
Mhm.
And he narrates the audiobook, I believe, at least the one that I listened to.
Yeah.
And there is also a YouTube documentary or maybe a Netflix show. I don't know where it was originally put out, but there is like an hour and a half video media format of something similar, but doesn't really go into a lot of what the book talks about. It's more of a sort of build up to the book itself, like more about the Dalai Lama's history and Desmond Tutu's history, which is pretty much the first chapter of the book. But if you watch the movie, that's pretty much the entirety of it. Um, and I believe this was published by Avery Publishing Group back in like 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. I might be off a year or two. Um, but yeah, as you said, it's the two of them kind of meeting in Dharamsala and having a conversation. And I had a little bit of a reverse almost response to the book. This book made me very sad,
Oh.
like very sad, just listening to the book. And for reasons you might not expect, but we can talk more about it as we go.
Okay. Yeah, so I think when they first start out, right, they make a pretty bold claim early on that joy isn't about this absence of suffering, but it's about something that can exist alongside it. So I guess just from an abstract, I guess, how did that hit for you? Like, did that feel like personally you believe that joy can exist during those difficult times, or did it kind of feel just unrealistic?
I mean, I felt like it almost has to, right? Like in the world that we live in, there's always suffering, whether it's you or you're seeing it somewhere else. Um, And that's kind of where the sadness came from, because as it's talking about the existence of joy in the presence of suffering, and as you go through suffering, it almost made me feel a little small. And they talk about this later, which we'll get to, but the the fact that you can see all of these things and still be joyous, and uh, they even mention like it can feel selfish sometimes, that the pursuit of joy is a like egocentric type thing, but they say it's not, they propose it's not. um, but you definitely feel that way sometimes. And there's I don't know, the joy has to exist, and they do differentiate between joy and happiness,
Mhm.
like happiness being the emotion of feeling something versus joy being almost a state of being. And if you look at it that way, then yes, I think that you being joyful and joyous as almost like a trait or a way of being can exist in a world that has suffering around you. Because it's almost like the Stoic philosophy of how you respond to the world around you, not necessarily how the world around you makes you feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And this one just kind of hit, on a different level for myself. I think I don't know if we mentioned it in prior podcasts, but my wife and I had experienced the loss of an infant son 2 years ago. And so, we've been to dark places before, and I mean, that's a really unique experience. Um, and there were these periods of like almost disassociation, to be able to get through that. I remember experiencing like a lot of conversations with my wife about, these moments when I think within the first 6 months after we were finally kind of had a moment to process, where we'd start to have like some of those like, moments of joy again, right? And it felt really hard to process, and even the experience of having that joy would almost make you feel guilty. So like, I think from that perspective, just entering it, I have felt and experienced that weird paradoxical feeling of being in a very nasty low place, but then also being able to, accept that there are can be like those moments. And honestly, that was the little bit of light that could help pull me through. So I definitely think that that's something that's possible and achievable, right? I don't think that like for the everyday person, like that's how they might experience or think about joy. So I appreciated that, if that's, kind of a new perspective that others may not have had.
Yeah, the perspective of joy being more of a way of being for sure was
Mhm.
maybe one of the few sort of novel things that I took from the book, and differentiating it from the emotion of being happy. That's that was a bit enlightening, and something that the book definitely portrayed better than some other um, like self-help novels and things like that.
Yeah, and when they dive deeper into joy, they talk about the 8 pillars of joy, and so they break it down into the 4 mindset pillars and 4 heart pillars. So the mindset being perspective, humility, humor, and acceptance, and then the heart being forgiveness, gratefulness, compassion, and just generosity. So as they went into these different pillars or mindsets, were there any of the pillars that felt like they were maybe more practical or useful for you, that just kind of resonated when you think about your practice of joy?
To be honest, I did not remember any of them. That I mean, so
No
they
worries.
were,
Yeah.
yeah, they were the sort of chapter headings, right, of
Mhm.
each of the chapters,
Yeah.
and the two of them discussing things uh, that was actually much more entertaining. I did find the book incredibly entertaining. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not going to answer the question until like after I have you repeat them, because I almost have to write them all down. But the two of them discussing joy and the two of their interaction together was amazing, as far as the back and forth quotes that were included. So what were the pillars again?
Yeah, so you've got perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, and generosity. Um, and they gave their experiences how, in exile, thinking about the Dalai Lama and the forgiveness that he was able to, being able to take a step back, right? Getting a different perspective on, this experience of being exiled from the Chinese, from his land. So, it's, I guess when I was thinking about this, there are these moments where I was like trying in the back of my head to think about like, how do I like approach this in my everyday life? How do I actually make this realistic, right? Because like you look at these two characters and I mean they're public figures, right? So it's sometimes a little bit unrelatable just because of their position, and they have a religious stance as well, right? So from that perspective, I could see this book maybe not pulling readers in if they didn't like identify with one or the other, um,
And I
because of
would be
that
careful
perspective.
with that. Yeah, I'd be
Yep.
careful with that, because I almost went into the book with that mindset, and I
Hmm.
found that neither one of them pushed any sort of
Yeah.
religious um, practice on anyone. I mean, it came up a few times, but
Hmm.
like my favorite quote from the entire book was um, the Dalai Lama looking over at Desmond Tutu, who is Christian, and says, if you're right, or something along these lines, like if you're right,
Hmm.
then you're going to heaven, and because I don't believe, I'm going to the other place,
Hmm.
but I think I can do a lot of good in the other place.
Yeah.
And the two of them take that religious perspective almost completely off the table
Yeah.
throughout the majority of the book, which I found refreshing. And if you watch the even just the introduction to that short video I was talking about, they are so happy to be with each other. They are giggling like little boys,
Yeah.
and it almost reminds me of the who plays Magneto in
Oh,
X
I
Men.
know. Yeah, I know who you're talking
Sir,
about, but I'd have to Google it.
yeah.
Better
So I know
names.
he's knighted. I know that, but I'm terrible with names. I can name multiple characters he plays. He's doing Shakespeare now,
Ian,
I think.
I was gonna say, is that
Yeah, it's
Ian McKellen?
Ian. Yeah, Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Um, he's giving an interview at one point, and he's talking to someone about how he went back to Britain, and he gets in a cab, and the person driving asks him like, where are we going, love? And he starts to think about like how two grown adult men saying that they love each other, and you have Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, and they're there like embracing, holding each other hands. They are laughing the entire time. It's actually quite fun to see. Um, I do think that of those pillars, that some of the easier ones are the last few. That they're the ones we probably think about the most,
Hmm.
like humor,
Yeah.
like seeing sort of the light in dark times, but then also just generosity, having
Hmm.
that external focus of being appreciative of what you have, and then being able to extend an a helping hand out to others um, in times of their need, even if you are needing at the same time. It's those are the ones that I think are the ones we think about and we talk about the most.
Yeah, and I like that how you you know as you observe how they interact with one another. I think that's one thing that has always kind of brought me back to the Dalai Lama, right? And it is that like childish nature about him. And I guess like when I'm thinking about that in terms of like how would I how do I want to better myself and practice those types of things in my day to day life? And I think about the fact that like as I think about like how serious I am at home and I'm trying to get stuff done, I'm trying to, be progressive and be successful, right? I find myself kind of getting more narrow and getting more stern and trying to, I'm so focused. And, this book in that kind of light nature kind of brought me back to, my childhood upbringing. I spent a lot of weekends going out to the farm, and I had a grandmother who was always just laughing about everything. I remember, every weekend, my mom and my grandma, just chatting about random stuff, and they would just be making fun, making light of these otherwise like very serious kind of events that would happen. And so, it's that brevity that they brought into life that I remember really being a great spark in my childhood. And I think about that in my, my own life. And like, I think that I can laugh at myself, but I kind of have to be in the right mindset. And I've been trying to be more mindful about that around my kids so that I'm not quite so serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that in context of like the perspective shift. That was another one, right? Like, um, as a father, I feel like I have tried to instill in my kids, give them the tools to be able to say like, I have feelings. I'm not my feelings, right? There's a space between the action and how I respond, and to be able to pause for a moment and be able to, even if you have, and we'll talk about it in terms of like red feelings and either red or green actions. And so we'll say, you're having some red feelings right now. You're feeling really angry, but do you want to express them in terms of red actions? Do you want to be aggressive, or do you want to choose one of five different, green actions? And so that's been one like tool that we've been really trying to use a lot. And just having that space and feeling empowered to be able to take a breath and step back and be able to ask like, is there another way to be able to see this, right? And then be able to move forward. And I feel like that's at least one that is maybe more practical approach. So that perspective shift that I can see in a day-to-day life. And I say that, and yet, of course, I'm human and fallible too. And then I, I look at how I act and operate in my day to day life, and I got to think to myself, like, my kids are going to mirror whatever they see, and despite us
Mm-hmm.
trying to work on it, like if I can't do that at the end of the day when I'm tired and cranky, like, what good is that going to be for my kids, right? So, yeah,
I may have to,
perspective and humor. Yeah.
yeah, I may have to steal that. Like my guy's still pretty young, so he just is actions.
Hmm.
But as
Yeah.
he gets
Right.
older, like we'll have to definitely Im- implement something like that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, one other one that maybe kind of stuck out to me, I guess, I was thinking about, but like acting for gratitude is a reset, like not a ritual. So like instead of having a formal journal, having it be a practice where you take a quick mental check to say like, what's one thing today that didn't have to go right but did. You're kind of flipping the script instead of being so intent on judging things, like
Mhm.
allowing the universe to show up to you in a different way, and allowing it to surprise yourself. And I think one way that you know I feel like I've been able to get there is by having a partner to be able to have conversations at night with Casey. I think that was a practice that we did after Aiden, is we would spend some time either in the morning, we'd have coffee together, or in the evenings we'd have some time carved out before bed where you can kind of say your gratefuls, and then as you hear the other person being grateful, it empowers you to think about those things that maybe you wouldn't have paid attention to in the day. They notice those little those little quirks about your little one that just put a smile on your face. So having a partner or having somebody else to share in that too is really important, right?
Right. And also, like just the getting the gratitude out, like putting it out in the world, either by writing it down if that's what you prefer, or like saying it out loud, like saying it to the if you're grateful for someone, saying it to them, or if you're grateful for like a thing. Like I read another book and I kind of thought for a local book club um, that I'll probably do a review on. The gentleman in it spoke to his house, and the house spoke back. So there's a little bit of some mysticism there, but the book said if you lived in a house long enough, eventually it starts talking back to you. And my wife and I were both talking about, like, we're looking at other houses, like we are looking at possibly renovating this one, and like for to have more space to grow the family, to do things. And it's like, would it be all that bad if we were just here forever? And I'm grateful for this house.
Yeah.
Like we got it at a good time right before COVID. So if we didn't get it then, we probably wouldn't have for quite some time. So like there are people out there that don't have this. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely grateful, but either saying it to yourself, saying it to the inanimate objects, saying it to the people around you. Yes, I think that's very, very important, and something that makes it real. Like we can all like sit and say, yeah, I know, like I recognize and yada yada, but like saying it real and saying it regularly like makes it real in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and the more you do it, right, the stronger those neurons get. The more you think about doing it, and it's the practice of it, right? So, I remember even in the the end of the book, after it technically finishes, then it kind of gives like there are some prescriptions for different practices that you can do. Um, I guess some of them just um, reminded me of like yoga or something, right? Where you
Yeah,
sit and take a breath and be mindful of your thoughts, mindful of your
yeah,
breath, and just taking a moment to recenter yourself. And like uh, sometimes I feel like I'm so busy and there's so much to do that I hate to I hate to even take that extra 5 minutes or whatever. Um, and so finding the right place to be able to do that in the way that works for you, I think is really important. And it doesn't always have to be like on a yoga mat and completely
yeah.
right, like the right time. But I think even just like in my work, I work from home, and it's so easy to just work through lunch, to work through right, and just keep going because you're in the zone. And
Hmm.
so blocking out that time and actually taking my lunch and actually taking just that 5 minutes afterwards to just relax for a moment, clear my head. That has been kind of a good ritual that that I try to practice. Um, so we've kind of talked about a lot of things that we feel like may be good or even practical ways to approach some of these um, practices for joy. But like, were there any that you felt like were or anything maybe in the book that you felt like maybe wasn't as relatable or a little bit harder to approach?
I don't. I honestly don't think so. I think that the book did a pretty good job. It made things relatable throughout. I thought it was going to have a very religious sort of um, overtone, and it didn't. Like
Yeah,
that was
very
left out.
conversational.
It
Mm-hmm.
was very conversational. The two, um, like there were a lot of like parable type things that they would talk about. Um, I think they did a really good job of making things relatable to the reader or to the listener in both of our cases. Um, so I don't think there really was anything that I found too impractical. Um, I mean, we're both all of us are human. Anyone listening to this, maybe some pets somewhere, some dogs and cats, some lizards and fish, but like the we're going to fail at accomplishing what this book puts out for us. These pillars aren't always going to sort of support us. We're going to fall down in the process of seeking joy, and even they talk about that sometimes, that it gets hard, but I don't think anything is outside of the reach of everyone.
Yeah.
Did you think there was anything in particular that was sort of
The one section where you kind of mentioned it before, like the joy versus the chasing of happiness, right? And just kind of wrestling with this concept of like, uh, joy showing up when you're focused on other people. And I remember there's a book I read in college, and it just kind of explored the extremes of the two. Either the fact that if you become too self-involved and into your ego, right, there's negative consequences there. But if on the flip side, it would kind of show that if you give too fully of yourself, that you can also lose yourself as well. And
Mhm.
so for me, it has always felt like that it's about that balance. And so on the surface, of course, like when you help others, you get this great joy that comes from sharing in that. But I think sometimes I struggle, and maybe this is an only child thing, but I am like I was thinking about that, like the joys that I get from things that I've historically chased, right? Is that the idea of chasing a dream that you have of yourself. And so like if I'm doing an athletic event and I'm like chasing this goal and I've got to be committed, and if I need to get there, like there's all these things you have to do to be able to accomplish that. And there are big benefits that come with that type of discipline. Like there are benefits that you can show your kids, but yeah, at what point is the balance where you're doing it in a way that is you know considerate of your family, right? Like
Mhm.
if it's a lot of hours in the gym or whatnot, how do you think about maybe doing that in a way where you're inviting your kids to participate in that and to experience that joy as well. And so I think, like, as someone going through in my mid to late 30s now, right, like with now kids that are getting older, it has
It,
been a shift, even from having small kids that you can still kind of get away with focusing on yourself. But as they get older, like they're in sports, they're doing all their own things, and really, like, you really do it as a father, you kind of have to give up on maybe some of those other things that you may want for yourself, right, as you try to get that environment so that your kids can nurture.
I I think we've talked about this, Eric. I just think you have to give up on some sleep.
No,
Like
you gotta take care of yourself. You got eight
you,
hours, bud. 8 cups of water, 8 hours of sleep.
yeah, you won't hear any argument from me about the 8 cups of water thing. But I will remind you, there is water in coffee, so, and that
Decaf
is
coffee.
that counts. Oh, even caffeinated coffee, that water counts too. And then the yeah, 8 hours, maybe six, maybe five.
You'll pay
But
for it later. Yeah.
you will, I'm sure you will. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the book says that any of that is the pursuit of certain things that will help you feel happiness and some of those other feelings of success and accomplishment isn't mutually exclusive from
Yeah.
the state of being joyful. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not mutually exclusive. One can sometimes actually facilitate the other, but that you do not need to be happy all the time to be a joyful to be joyful and to be a joyful person. Um, and that there are going to be times when you're not, when you have other emotions, but you're still responding with joy.
And maybe that's kind of what maybe I was trying to get to, is that like I think I'm still maybe struggling when I'm thinking about it, how much of that is, just where I'm experiencing the happiness and I'm trying to pull apart the
Yeah,
parts that are
separate the two.
joy. Yeah, separate the two. Yeah, because I, especially as someone who I feel like I've spent many many years like on a hamster wheel, right? Like
Hmm.
running on a treadmill by myself, or spinning on a bike, or staring at a wall lifting weights, right? It's
Hmm.
um those have been activities that, like, I can get it, like you can do those exercises in a lot of ways. It's kind of nice parallel because you're suffering through that, but ultimately, like, you're getting a lot of joy because you're exercising, you're feeling good, you're building yourself up. um, and so it's a delayed gratification. But when you think about it outside of yourself and you're thinking about it as bringing that joy into your day-to-day life, for me it's always been really hard to kind of to separate the two. And
Hmm.
it's not like I have multiple personality disorder, but I really feel like I'm a different person when I'm at work versus when I'm with my wife versus when I'm with my kids, right? Versus when
Hmm.
I'm in
Yeah.
my exercise routine, or with a team. Like, and
Yeah.
it's, for me, it's hard to kind of separate the two, because I'll either be super focused or, you know,
Hmm.
more laid back with other folks. So,
Yeah. Well, and I understand that more than most. So I work in healthcare and I work as a physical therapist. So I am with 18 different people in a day because I work long shifts. I am 20 different people in a day. Like my personality shifts. It's like, yeah, this personality was made for you. this one this one is for this
yeah,
person
yeah,
all day long. So,
yeah.
yeah, there's
That's
um there's a lot to be said in the book, I think, about that. And they start with it. It's they do the introduction of the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu and both of their histories and what kind of brought them together and getting them to Dharamsala and meeting each other on the tarmac. Desmond Tutu has cancer. The Dalai Lama is getting older. It's probably going to be the last time they ever meet. Um, but then they open it with the difference of like the pursuit of happiness versus being joyful. And I think they do that on purpose in order to sort of set the stage for the rest of the book, and that you can be joyful and have all of these conflicting emotions at the same time.
Yeah. That was kind of reflected in the end scene, as
Mhm.
well, as they were leaving, and kind of potentially saying goodbye for the last time, and carrying that, the joy along with
Mhm.
that sadness. So I did appreciate the echoing of that sentiment. Yeah. So it was an interesting book. I guess, like, if you had to rate it, given that you kind of forgot all of it, what
Yeah, yeah.
what would you rate it? 1 to 5 stars.
1 to 5 or one to
I don't know.
10.
Whatever you do. 1 to 10. Yeah, yeah,
I'd give it I'd give it a 7. Like I enjoyed it reading
yeah,
it. I mean, similar to the Iron Hope review that I did by myself for the channel. I just I didn't find much of it to be groundbreaking. Like the strategies for living a more joyful life, some of these things, like they're the things you hear, but all in one place.
yeah,
I did really appreciate the context of it all. The two sort of religious leaders talking to each other. I did really enjoy their interactions. Um, so I like that part. So I definitely put it above average, and it's very fast, easy to read.
yeah.
There are some memorable quotes. There were a few others that I can pull out, but just the overall sort of messaging. At the end, I kind of am left with this. Yeah, I've heard most of this before, and I, it's all good. So I think I'd give it a 7 out of 10 um, for the enjoyment factor alone and the quickness. I think I finished it in like 3 days.
Yeah, really
How about
quick.
you?
I like the tone. I'm probably at the same place as you, probably about a seven, because again, like I think it was really refreshing to have something that just wasn't so negative or so intense or so deep, and this was just kind of light, and it was just, yeah, refreshing. I guess, yeah, sometimes I wish that there was just a little bit more that I feel like I could take away from the book and say, hey, this is what I'm going to use in my everyday life. This is something new. And I don't know that I necessarily got that. I think,
Mhm.
like you said, I think these are all kind of things you've heard before, it, but like, are you really going to change it in your day to day life? Even just to have the moment to reflect on it, I think is good, because either way, it's like, as you mirror, as you hear these things, like I think it'll get reflected. So yeah, but probably a seven. But I'm excited to kind of maybe turn back to fun sci-fi or fantasy, something fun to read.
Yeah, well, if we get one of your books, I don't think it's going to be all that fun. And if we get one of mine, I don't think it's going to be all that. It's definitely going to be rather deep. So we'll kind of see what we get. So let me flip over to my share screen
Well,
here.
that just means that I gotta add a fun book. This is where you ask me, which book do I want to add?
Oh, I thought you had Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen this
So
one at Barnes and Noble, and I don't know. I'm a sucker for a fun cover, and then I start seeing the whole series, and it looks just fun. So yeah.
so got the first
You
one.
already got it. Yep.
Yeah, I
I'm
haven't
actually
read
going to
it.
get this in real print, so I can actually put it on the shelf and not say I just have a huge Audible count.
Yeah. So we have The Dispossessed, which is a relatively deep sci-fi book by Ursula K. Le Guin. That one was one of mine. Dungeon Crawler Carl's your new edition. Same Bed, Different Dreams, which is an alternate reality, like Korean history book. The Atlas of AI, which is an AI book. Kafka on the Shore, which is sort of a mystical realism sort of alternate reality book as well, and then Shadow and Claw, which is a relatively intense sci-fi book. Some people will call it the sort of king of sci-fi books. So let's go ahead and spin the wheel and see what we get.
Ooh, cockroaches on the shore.
All right, Kafka on the Shore. So let's see. I have it here somewhere. Um, you looking for it?
Yeah, 2002
It might be over.
novel.
It might be over here. Let me see. Yeah. All right. Kafka on the Shore. So I'll read the back for today. In Kafka on the Shore, we meet a teenage boy, Kafka Tamura, who is on the run, and Nakata, an aging simpleton who is drawn to Kafka for reasons that he cannot fathom. As their paths converge, acclaimed author Haruki Murakami unfolds readers in a world where cats talk, fish fall from the sky, and spirits slip out of their bodies to make love or commit murder. In what is truly a remarkable journey, Kafka on the Shore displays one of the world's great storytellers at the peak of his powers.
Hmm.
And I've never read any Murakami except for his nonfiction running book.
Hmm.
That
Oh,
is the
that's cool.
only Murakami I've read. Um, so I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it says the New Yorker says it's an instantly metaphysical mind bender.
Yeah.
So looks good. I think I'm actually
So
going to walk physically into Barnes and Noble and find the book. It's
there
like
you go.
such an ancient way to do things, but I'm going to do it.
I bought this at my local bookstore, um, in uh, About Time Books, which is where I go to the book club. I'm the only male in the book club, so if you want to make the drive and join me for one, but the it's funny at the last book club they spent the first 5 minutes just kind of talking about how they were so glad I was there. I'm like, I've been to one of these before, but the one I went to before was the sci-fi book because they switch
Mhm.
genres every month and you don't have to go to all of them.
Yeah.
Um, and that had like 10 people at it. And then this last one, was more of like a feel good summer book, titled, uh, what was it? The road to good hearts or something like that. The road to broken
Hmm.
hearts. Um, that book was super popular and there was probably 50 people there. It was insane.
I'm trying to look just to see like what kind of options we got outside of Barnes and Noble. It looks like there might be one or two places, so I might have to just go on a little adventure. Yeah, I loved um, going to bookstores like when I was in college and stuff like that. And when we lived out in Portland, there was Powell's Books, which was crazy. I don't know when you came out there. Did you ever go to Powell's Books? Do you run in?
No, no,
Okay.
that's more my thing now. Like for 6, 7 years there, all I was consuming was physical therapy literature, like
Mm-hmm.
physical therapy podcasts, like anything I could do that had to do with physical therapy. I was consuming it like voraciously, and
Mm-hmm.
then around probably a year before COVID, which was decent timing, um, I really wanted to start reading again. So that's sort of when I started to read more. We started playing D&D again, like all these things that we did. You can ask my parents. As a kid, I would read
Mm-hmm.
constantly, back of the car on car rides, like waiting for doctor's visits, like sitting around. I mean, from probably first grade until the end of high school.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read 60% of the books in the the fiction books at the local library in our hometown.
Mm-hmm.
So the I'm glad that I started reading again. That's for sure. But no,
Yeah.
I never went there.
Yeah. Sounds like we're gonna have to take a trip.